I awoke to the brittle crunch of glass underfoot, and for a disorienting moment, I wondered if I'd mistakenly walked into someone else's home. Sharp fragments reflected the morning sun, strewn across the living room carpet. My patio door, an immaculate sliding glass fixture I'd installed not long ago, was a jagged yawning hole. Cold air poured in, along with the tangy smell of pine from the trees outside. My heart jumped into my throat. Had someone broken in? I scanned the house, searching for any sign of a trespasser. The TV was where I'd left it. My mother's antique clock collection, always a conversation piece, stood untouched on the mantel. As far as I could tell in those first panicked moments, nothing was missing. No open drawers, no rummaged shelves. Just one massive, unexplainable hole in a locked glass door. Seconds later, the uneasy realization set in. Whoever had broken in knew exactly where to look for something. Perhaps a vantage point, or maybe they left in a hurry. But why was nothing gone? An elaborate prank? A misguided act of vandalism? Just then, the cold breeze swept a swirl of glass dust across the floor, reminding me I needed to be absolutely sure I was safe. My mind raced to my new security cameras, only a week old, courtesy of some shady going-ons I'd noticed around the neighborhood. Ironically, I'd installed them after the local homeowners association, HOA, started cracking down on suspicious activity. My place hadn't exactly been a fortress, but I never expected to be the target of some break-in. Not in quiet Redwood Glen, a subdivision that prided itself on its calm, tree-lined streets and well-tended lawns. I grabbed my phone to check the footage. As luck would have it, the camera's lens peered directly at the patio from the inside corner of my roof. My heart hammered as I tapped the screen to see if any motion had been recorded. The system's timeline indicated an event logged at 2:23 a.m. I pressed play, half expecting to see a masked figure creeping across the back lawn with a crowbar. Instead, the video was pitch black for several seconds. Then an eerie shape appeared at the edge of the frame. Something seemed off, blurred, like a silhouette against the dim light. But the figure never came close enough or turned its face to the camera. Then static. Just static. What in the world? I whispered. The feed cut out. Then it resumed with me flipping on the patio light at 6:15 that morning, discovering the damage. The camera had failed to capture the break-in, or had it been tampered with? Instinct told me to call the police, so I dialed 911. While waiting for the dispatcher to pick up, I tiptoed through the debris, carefully peering into each room to confirm no one was hiding inside. The operator took my information calmly, then said a patrol car would be on its way. When I hung up, adrenaline left me shaky. Maybe a neighbor's doorbell cam recorded something. Redwood Glen wasn't short on folks who liked to keep tabs on everyone else's property. Sure enough, a knock came on my front door a half hour later. It was Officer Jamie Garcia, a young but professional presence in uniform. Her expression switched from clipped detachment to mild surprise when she spotted the scattered shards of glass. No sign of forced entry aside from this broken slider, she asked as we carefully stepped around the mess. I don't see any, I replied, and nothing is missing, not even a book or a lamp. My security footage is blacked out from about 2:20 to 6:15 this morning. She scribbled in a small notepad. So this could be someone trying to scare you. Did you receive any threats? Have any ongoing disputes with neighbors or acquaintances? I stiffened, thinking about the HOA. I'd had a run-in with them recently about my security cameras. I'd installed them, ironically, to deter petty theft, like rummaging through mailboxes or rifling through unlocked cars. The HOA claimed security cameras were an exterior modification that needed prior approval. They threatened me with a fine unless I took them down or moved them to a less conspicuous location. But that was Redwood Glen's HOA for you. Always on the lookout for the slightest contravention of the rulebook, from the color of your front door to how many plants you kept on your porch. Still, would the HOA itself stoop to vandalizing a homeowner's property? That sounded absurd. What possible reason would they have to break my window? Officer Garcia caught my hesitation. Anyone come to mind? She repeated softly. I paused. Well, I've clashed with the HOA. They're not exactly fans of my security cameras. They threatened fines, said the angles of my cameras invaded neighbors' privacy. Last month, I installed them anyway. She gave a thoughtful nod. We'll check with them, among others. Sometimes, these disputes escalate in unexpected ways. There was a subtle curiosity in her eyes, but she kept it professional. After collecting my statement, snapping photos, and examining the splintered edges of the glass, she promised to keep me updated. As the cruiser pulled away, I felt a knot of dread in my stomach. This wasn't just some random act of vandalism. Something bigger simmered beneath the surface. When my phone buzzed, I nearly jumped. A text from my neighbor, Anita, read, "Heard you had a break-in. Are you okay?" I thumbed back an immediate response, then realized I'd better check the exterior cameras again. Maybe my other camera had a better angle. But when I opened the app, the same suspicious blackout was there. No data from 2:20 to 6:15 a.m. Anxiety pulsed in my temples, and I knew the next step wouldn't be simple. Redwood Glen was known for its squeaky clean image, but that glossy exterior might just be hiding something downright crooked. Little did I know, this fiasco was only the beginning. The scratchy, silent security footage and the glimmering shards on my floor would soon grow into something larger, an expose that would rattle Redwood Glen to its pristine, manicured core. The next morning, I woke up to a bizarrely official envelope slipped under my front door. At first glance, the HOA's logo on the letterhead made me roll my eyes. "What is it this time?" I muttered. My frustration was already sky-high from the break-in. But once I read the letter, my blood pressure spiked. They were fining me. Not for the cameras, at least not directly, but for violating subdivision security standards by allegedly failing to maintain adequate exterior lighting to deter criminals. The letter read, "Your property's insufficient illumination has resulted in criminal activity that could have been prevented." In other words, the blame for the broken door was on me for not installing a bright enough floodlight. Oh, and the fine? $1,000. I nearly laughed in disbelief. The letter also demanded prompt payment, or else I'd face a lien on my home. How is this even legal? I muttered. I kept reading, scanning for any mention of cameras or privacy complaints. Sure enough, the final paragraph took aim at my security setup. Please note, this incident further illustrates the need to address the aesthetic concerns your cameras pose to neighboring homes. They were twisting the facts to suggest the cameras not only didn't prevent the crime, but had contributed to an air of false security. 2 days after my door was smashed, I was the one facing potential penalties. My anger simmered to a boil. First, Redwood Glen tries to strong-arm me into removing cameras meant to protect my home. Next, someone breaks in, or at least smashes a door. And now, the HOA was ironically using that as proof I needed to fix my poor lighting and possibly remove or adjust cameras that don't match the neighborhood aesthetic. Still fuming, I stomped over my laptop and pulled up Redwood Glen's official bylaws. Scrolling through endless PDF pages of rules about paint colors, fence heights, mailbox designs, and more, I looked for anything referencing security cameras or external lighting. Indeed, there was a brief mention. Any modifications that alter the property's external appearance must be approved by the HOA board. A few lines down was a snippet about lighting. Lighting must be consistent with the architectural style of the subdivision. Nothing about a $1,000 fine for inadequate floodlights. It seemed they had twisted the rules beyond recognition. I sent an email to the HOA's general address, referencing the break-in report number and demanding they revoke the fine. Within an hour, I received an auto-response with a phone number for urgent matters. Of course, HOA management was notorious for playing phone tag. But I dialed anyway, only to be met with a chipper voicemail greeting from Christine Parker, the new HOA president. "Leave a message, please." The recording ended sweetly. I had the sense Christine was not going to make this easy for me. I took a step back to consider the bigger picture. Someone broke into my house, the cameras blacked out, the HOA slapped me with a fine. The coincidence felt too big to ignore. Could it be that someone from the HOA orchestrated the break-in to bolster their argument that my cameras were worthless or intrusive? It sounded insane, but Redwood Glen had a history of petty power plays. I spent the rest of the morning wandering the neighborhood, hoping to find neighbors who might have seen or heard something. A few folks shook their heads sympathetically. "I was sleeping," said one elderly woman named Linda. Another neighbor, Todd, said he did hear glass break around 2 a.m., but assumed it was a raccoon tipping something over. He apologized for not investigating further. I was about to give up when I spotted old Mr. Fisher across the street, perched on his porch. He sipped coffee from a thermos and rocked slowly in his wicker chair, a permanent fixture in Redwood Glen's daily routine. Mr. Fisher had lived here since the subdivision was built in the 1970s. Some said he knew all the local gossip before it even happened. "Morning," I greeted him. "Did you by any chance see anything unusual the other night?" He lowered his thermos, giving me a conspiratorial glance. "Could be I saw someone scuttling around that time," he replied quietly, beckoning me closer. "I was out here because I don't sleep so well anymore. Saw a shape walking along the hedges behind your place. Tall figure. Looked like they paused at your back gate." My heart kicked up. "You're sure?" He nodded. "Could have been a man. Hard to see. They had something in their hands." Next thing I know, your motion light flickered, then went off. Figured it was a power surge. He frowned, looking guilty. "I should have called the police, but I assumed you'd installed some fancy contraption that turned lights on and off. These new tech things are beyond me. Do you recall if the figure left on foot or in a car?" He cocked his head thoughtfully. "I didn't see a vehicle. After the light went out, it got real dark. Then I saw them dash away across your backyard, toward the row of pines that lines the main road, I think. Disappeared after that." I thanked him profusely. He seemed a bit uneasy, but I assured him I was just collecting details for the police. As I walked away, a new possibility surfaced. The intruder might have specifically knocked out my motion sensor or tampered with its wiring. That would explain the cameras going offline at the same time. It was starting to sound more intentional than a mere random act of vandalism. I reported everything I'd learned to Officer Garcia over the phone. She listened patiently, but explained that lack of a clear suspect hampered the investigation. "We'll keep an eye out for any similar break-ins," she said, but Redwood Glen rarely had anything beyond a stray raccoon in someone's trash. The weekend arrived, and I spent hours rechecking every bolt and seal on my cameras, even upgrading the firmware in case someone hacked them. I installed a new motion sensor and bright lights that practically lit the whole yard like a stage. If the HOA was so concerned about lighting, they'd get lighting, though I half expected them to fine me for being too bright. Sure enough, on Monday, a new letter showed up. This one claimed my lighting was now excessive, causing potential disturbance to neighbors. The threat of another fine dangled in its pages. My jaw dropped. This was beyond ridiculous. But I had bigger fish to fry. I wanted the break-in culprit caught, or at least identified. My gut told me the HOA board, or someone connected to it, had a hand in this fiasco. What I didn't realize was that as I stewed in my frustration, the HOA was about to make an even bigger move, one that would prove just how far they were willing to go to maintain power and control within Redwood Glen. Monday evening, I stood in line at the Redwood Glen Community Center, waiting to enter the monthly HOA meeting. At first, my intention was merely to confront them about the stacked fines. But as I leaned against the corridor's dusty display of softball trophies and old photos, I heard whispered murmurs of something bigger. Christine Parker, the new HOA president, had apparently called this special session to investigate the recent rash of security incidents, plural. That was news to me. To my knowledge, I was the only one who'd had a break-in. If I was suspicious before, I was downright alarmed now. My mind spun with possibilities. Were they using my incident as a pretext to clamp down on all cameras? Or was someone behind the scenes orchestrating a drama to pass some draconian new rule? In Redwood Glen, you learned quickly that a small group with the right influence could twist facts to push their own agenda. When I finally filed into the meeting room, I recognized nearly everyone on the board from yard signs or newsletters. Christine Parker presided in the center, her posture straight as a lightning rod, her neat blonde bob stiff with hairspray. Flanking her were the usual suspects: Dave Carson, the aging ex-military man who oversaw landscaping rules with an iron fist, and the rest of the board, each with their own quirks and fiefdoms. The seats in the audience filled quickly with folks both curious and concerned. After some perfunctory opening remarks, Christine cleared her throat and began, "We've had a troubling event in our normally safe neighborhood. A break-in occurred at one of our residents' homes." Her gaze flicked to me. "We as the HOA must take decisive action to ensure Redwood Glen remains a secure and harmonious community. That's why I'm proposing stricter guidelines on personal surveillance equipment and mandatory compliance with HOA-approved security systems." A ripple of chatter spread through the room. My hands clenched around the plastic folding chair's edge. Christine continued, "Some homeowners have installed cameras without board approval. These can create blind spots, fail to integrate with our recommended lighting standards, and even infringe on the privacy of neighbors. When an incident occurs, the entire neighborhood is affected." She paused, letting her words sink in. Meanwhile, my blood was boiling. She was spinning my break-in, into some bizarre argument that personal cameras were a problem. I raised my hand, ignoring the glares from other board members. "Yes." Christine acknowledged me with icy politeness. I stood. "I'm a homeowner who experienced that break-in. Nothing was taken, but my property was damaged. My personal cameras were tampered with. And now the HOA claims my lighting was insufficient, then excessive. Meanwhile, the actual criminal is still out there." She pressed her lips into a thin line. "We understand your frustration, sir. That's precisely why we need a standardized approach. The break-in reveals how patchwork security can fail us." "Fail?" I repeated, exasperated. "My cameras didn't fail. I suspect they were deliberately sabotaged. And that sabotage might have come from someone with knowledge of the HOA's obsession over camera placements." A murmur spread through the room. Christine stiffened. "That is quite an allegation," she snapped, trying to maintain composure. "It's not an allegation. It's a suspicion," I countered. "One that the police are investigating. My question is, why is the HOA so determined to remove personal security cameras? Or, in the same breath, threatening fines for not adhering to some vaguely defined standard?" A voice from the audience called out, "I think we should all be allowed to have cameras. They keep us safe." Another added, "Right? The board shouldn't micromanage every last detail. We're grown adults here." Christine raised her hands, calling for order. "We only want what's best for the community. Too many random installations create confusion, like the homeowner who had bright spotlights shining into the neighbor's windows at all hours." I knew that was directed at me. "We are forming a subcommittee to investigate these matters thoroughly. Until we finalize new guidelines, we expect all homeowners to comply with existing rules. That means removing unapproved cameras or adjusting them to board specifications." My heart pounded. They were doubling down. The rest of the meeting devolved into a back and forth about property rights, privacy concerns, and the board's authority. By the end, nothing was resolved. As the crowd dispersed, I wove through the throng, trying to intercept Christine. She spotted me and immediately turned to speak with someone else, blatantly ignoring me. I was about to leave in frustration when a slender woman with curly red hair touched my arm. "Hi," she said in a quiet voice. "I'm Kathy Miller, the board's secretary." She glanced over her shoulder at Christine's imposing figure. "I might be able to give you some insight." Curiosity overcame my annoyance. "Let's talk," I said. We stepped into a quieter corner by a glass display case of old Redwood Glen photos. Kathy lowered her voice. "Off the record, I think there's more going on than you realize. Some of the board members have personal stakes in certain security companies. The talk is that they want to mandate a single system that all homeowners have to use, with the HOA taking a cut of the installation fees." My jaw slackened. "That's unbelievably corrupt." She nodded, looking uncomfortable. "I can't prove it, but the push to demonize personal cameras fits the narrative they've been weaving, like they want a reason to say, your home system is not adequate or is too invasive. You must sign up with our recommended solution." That explains so much. Suddenly, the sabotage of my cameras could be part of a larger scheme. Stage or encourage a break-in, show how inadequate my cameras were, then push the community to adopt an HOA-endorsed vendor. Everyone would pay a tidy monthly fee, giving the board a steady revenue stream. I felt a surge of indignation. I appreciate you telling me this, I told Kathy. But we need actual evidence to stop them. She nodded. I'll keep my eyes open. Be careful, though. Christine doesn't take challenges lightly. That evening, I paced my living room, unsettled. Someone on the HOA might be behind the break-in. If they staged it, they must have known my cameras could implicate them, so they cut off the feed. And if I refused to remove or modify my cameras, they'd bury me in fines or file a lien. I needed to get ahead of this. I needed proof. When darkness fell, I stepped into my backyard to check the motion lights. Everything lit up properly, bathing the yard in a harsh white glow. My cameras were back online, the feed streaming into my phone. Try it. I dared the darkness. I'm ready this time. But as I stood there, a chill ran through me. If the HOA was capable of staging a break-in, how much further might they go to enforce compliance? Redwood Glen's carefully curated tranquility felt more like a trap, and I was stuck in the middle, determined not to let them get away with it. Another week passed with no new incidents, until late one Friday night. My phone lit up, alerting me to motion near the back gate. My pulse quickened as I scrambled off the couch, nearly knocking over a half-finished mug of tea. Glancing at my screen, I saw the grainy image of someone in dark clothes creeping along the fence line, just beyond the camera's usual vantage. I sprang into action, yanking open the sliding door, now replaced with sturdier glass, and slipped out to the patio. My heart pounded. I didn't want a confrontation, but if that was the same intruder, I needed some real evidence. The security lights clicked on, flooding the yard. For a split second, I thought I saw movement near the hedges. Then nothing. I carefully approached the fence line, phone in hand, camera app open. My breath misted in the crisp night air. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic on the main road. No sign of the prowler. Returning inside, I studied the security footage. The figure had hovered in the same blind spot as before. But this time, I'd repositioned the camera angles. Even if they avoided one camera, the second one might have caught them. I rewound the second cam's feed, scanning the flickers of motion. There, a shape stepping into view, reaching up toward my security light switch. Then the figure noticed the second camera. A split-second recoil before they darted away. Their face was hooded, but I saw something that made my blood run cold. A patch on a jacket sleeve. It was a Redwood Glen HOA badge. I sat there, mouth agape, replaying the footage. Sure enough, the patch resembled the stylized pine tree logo that adorned every HOA document. I paused the video, zooming in. The angle was poor, but there was no mistaking that shape. My mind reeled. Why was someone wearing an HOA uniform or jacket sneaking onto my property in the dead of night? Saturday morning, I shared the footage with Officer Garcia. She agreed it looked like the HOA emblem, but stopped short of accusing anyone specifically. We can open a line of inquiry. May I have a copy of this video? I handed over a USB drive. I also want to press charges if we identify this person. This is trespassing, at least. She nodded, though her expression remained guarded, as if she suspected Redwood Glen's board members might have friends in higher places. Feeling more determined than ever, I decided to set an even better trap. I purchased a hidden, wireless minicam, disguised as a generic garden decoration, and placed it where the prowler had lurked. That way, if they returned, I'd catch them full on. Days later, the HOA subcommittee meeting was announced, set for a Tuesday evening at Christine Parker's own house. Interesting choice. Usually these things happened at the community center. Perhaps she wanted a more private environment. Kathy Miller discreetly passed me the address, urging me to keep a low profile. I arrived early, hoping to catch snatches of conversation as the board members trickled in. But Redwood Glen's neat rows of identical houses offered little cover, and Christine's place was no different. A manicured lawn, symmetrical flower beds, and an imposing front door. So I parked a few streets away and walked over, pretending to jog in workout clothes. Muffled voices emanated from the open windows. I couldn't risk being too close, so I meandered down the sidewalk, hoping to overhear. After a while, I recognized Dave Carson's gruff timbre. The break-in fiasco. We need to ensure it doesn't lead back to the association, he was saying. My heart lurched. Then Christine's voice. Relax. No one can tie it directly to us. We only gave the green light to show how unregulated cameras are a nuisance, not a solution. There was a pause. Still, I want to know who bungled the sabotage job. They were supposed to cut the power to those cameras, not break the entire patio door. A jolt of anger flashed through me. They had orchestrated it, or at least sanctioned it. I wanted to record this conversation, but I was too far away from my phone's mic to pick up anything beyond faint murmurs. I crept closer, crouching behind a hedge that lined Christine's side yard. The smell of freshly mulched bark filled my nostrils as I tried to contain my racing heart. Suddenly, movement behind me. I froze, expecting to be confronted by a security guard. But it was Kathy Miller, in discreet flats and a serious expression. She whispered, "Come around the back. You can stand by the open porch door and hear them more clearly." I nodded, grateful but also worried for her. We circled the property, where the porch sat above a small stone patio. The French doors were open, letting in the breeze. We took cover behind thick pillars out of sight. From this vantage, we could hear Christine's plan laid bare. Once we finalize the contract with Green Guard Security Solutions, every resident will be mandated to install it or face escalating fines. Redwood Glen sees a tidy profit share for the board. Meanwhile, personal cameras are outlawed. Too unreliable. She laughed softly. We've already proven that by staging a break-in that homeowners' precious cameras couldn't detect. I could feel Kathy trembling beside me. A swirl of outrage and vindication surged within me. This was the proof I needed, if only I could record it. Carefully, I held up my phone, pressing the record button. Christine kept talking. "We'd better contain that homeowner. He's been making noise. If we have to, we'll bury him in legal fees or more fines until he caves. Or we can claim he's in violation of something else. He can't fight the entire association." A confident chuckle rippled through the group, with Dave Carson chiming in. "That's the power of the HOA. No one can outlast us in court. We've got them all by the short hairs." I nearly bit through my lip, holding back the urge to barge in and confront them. We had enough to bury them with the police. I motioned to Kathy that we should leave quietly. We turned to slip away, but the motion sensor near the porch door clicked on, flooding the area with light. A sharp exclamation rang out from inside. "Who's there?" Christine's voice snapped. Before we could dart into the darkness, the porch door flew open. Christine and Dave stood there, shock etched on their faces. Kathy stepped forward, perhaps to protect me, but Dave lunged, grabbing my wrist in a surprisingly strong grip for an older man. My phone clattered to the ground. The recording was still running. Christine hissed, "You meddling pest. Did you record that?" I squirmed, wrestling my arm free. "If you think you can assault me, you're more foolish than I thought." My voice shook with adrenaline. "I heard every word about your break-in stunt." Her eyes flared with alarm. "Kathy, you traitor." She glared at Kathy as if to sear her with that gaze alone. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Kathy squared her shoulders. "Done the right thing." We stood in an impasse under the harsh porch light, tension thick as Redwood Glen's summer humidity. Dave picked up my phone, glancing at the screen. His face twisted with fury. "It's still recording." Christine snatched it out of his hand, but I yelled, "You do anything to that phone, and you'll answer for destruction of evidence." I was bluffing, but it sounded right enough. She froze, and that moment allowed me to snatch it back. Backing away, my heart pounding, I said, "Congratulations, you just turned your scam into a criminal conspiracy. The police will love this." Christine's face twisted in a mask of rage. "You realize no one will believe you. The HOA has the best lawyers in the county." Kathy and I took the chance to sprint off the property. My phone still in hand, I prayed the audio had recorded everything. That was a question for another moment, though. For now, I knew Redwood Glen's shining veneer had officially cracked badly. The next step was to get all of this to Officer Garcia and see if she could take the matter to a higher authority. Because after tonight, the HOA's con was fully exposed, and I wasn't about to go down quietly. By the time Kathy and I arrived at the local police station, it was nearly midnight. The fluorescent lights inside buzzed overhead, giving the worn tiles and chipped counters a harsh glow. Officer Garcia greeted us in the lobby, suppressing a yawn. "This better be good," she said with a half-smile. I was just about to sign off my shift. I handed her my phone, my hand still trembling. "We have a recording," I said quietly. The HOA board discussing orchestrating the break-in, sabotage, fines, an entire scheme. She led us to a back office where we could talk privately. As the digital file played, the tinny audio of Christine and Dave's voices filled the small room. Though the quality wasn't stellar, the incriminating content was clear. My stomach churned listening to it again, but Officer Garcia's eyes narrowed with each passing second. When the recording ended, she drew a breath. "That's a lot. Conspiracy to commit breaking and entering, among other charges. This definitely warrants an official investigation." She paused, nodding at Kathy. "And your eyewitness testimony will help, Ms. Miller." Kathy swallowed, her face pale but resolute. "I'll testify to everything I heard and saw." Garcia's expression was serious. "I'm going to loop in my supervisor. We'll need to do this by the book. Possibly get a warrant for HOA documents and phone records. With a lawyer, they might claim it was all just talk, but with your broken door and tampered cameras, we have physical evidence." I exhaled shakily, relief mingling with a knot of anxiety that refused to loosen. "So, what's enough to press charges?" "Certainly enough for probable cause," she affirmed. Within the next few days, events moved at breakneck speed. Redwood Glen residents woke to find uniformed officers at the HOA office, carrying out boxes of files and computer equipment. Rumors swirled like wildfire, with neighbors texting me constantly. "What's happening? Are they shutting down the HOA?" Others were in disbelief, thinking the board was simply under routine scrutiny for a financial oversight. Then came the official announcements. Christine Parker and Dave Carson were taken into custody, along with 2 other board members. Charges ranged from fraud to conspiracy, plus criminal mischief relating to the staged break-in. Every local news station latched onto the story, painting Redwood Glen as a prime example of an HOA power structure gone rogue. I watched from my living room, the same place I'd first discovered the shattered glass, as Christine Parker's elegant mugshot flashed on the TV screen. My phone chimed with texts of congratulations from neighbors, some of whom had also experienced petty violations or suspicious fines they'd never challenged. They were relieved to see the board's bullying exposed. A few days later, Officer Garcia called. "We've confirmed that the individual who actually smashed your patio door was a private contractor the HOA hired. He's already confessed, in exchange for a lighter sentence, that the board put him up to it. With your cameras offline, the break-in was supposed to demonstrate that personal systems don't protect homes. They plan to use the fear to pressure everyone into adopting the official HOA-endorsed security package." I leaned back in my chair, an overwhelming sense of closure rushing through me. "So they're all facing charges?" "Definitely. It'll go through the courts, but from the evidence we've collected, the case is pretty solid." Part of me was furious at how close they'd come to getting away with it. But mostly I was thankful that Redwood Glen's residents had broken free of the HOA's grip. The next big question was, what now? If the board was gutted, could Redwood Glen function without an HOA? In the weeks that followed, the county appointed a temporary administrator to handle HOA affairs until we could hold a new election. Kathy Miller, though shaken, was among the few who remained unscathed. Her role as a whistleblower had saved her from charges, and ironically, that made her a leading candidate to help reorganize Redwood Glen's leadership. She seemed reluctant, but the community rallied around her honesty. "I'll do what I can," she told me, "but I never wanted to run a homeowners association." We ended up holding a series of town hall-style meetings at the community center. Without Christine's intimidation tactics, these gatherings were surprisingly civil. Neighbors who used to avoid each other started sharing ideas for how to handle security that didn't involve invasive oversight or shady deals. In a collective sense, Redwood Glen found its voice again. As for me, I finally got those fines rescinded, and then some. The new caretaker board offered to cover my property damage repairs and refunded every cent in penalty fees I had ever paid to the association. It didn't erase the memory of stepping on shattered glass that morning or the anxiety of discovering my cameras had been tampered with, but it helped. I also replaced my camera system with an upgraded, fully encrypted model. My new motto: fool me once. Redwood Glen might still have a mandatory HOA, but at least there was more transparency. By law, any new cameras or security measures had to go through legitimate channels, no behind-the-scenes deals. And if the new board tried any funny business, the neighbors knew they had the power to push back. One final twist came when local media outlets interviewed the arrested board members. Christine Parker, with her trademark composure, insisted it was all a misunderstanding. She claimed she was a scapegoat for the unscrupulous contractor's actions, but the recorded audio suggested otherwise. Dave Carson tried to blame Christine, stating he was just following her lead. The finger-pointing within their ranks solidified the case for prosecutors. Eventually, a grand jury returned indictments, leading to a lengthy trial. I followed it from a distance, relieved that my direct involvement was mostly over. My testimony and Kathy's were crucial, of course, and in the end, the verdicts came down guilty on multiple counts of conspiracy and fraud. Christine Parker received a prison sentence, as did Dave. The Redwood Glen fiasco became a local legend, a cautionary tale about what can happen when too much unchecked power pools in the hands of a few unscrupulous individuals. Months later, Redwood Glen feels different. The uniform rows of houses still look the same from a distance, but a sense of renewed community pulses through the streets. Without the oppressive HOA fines looming at every turn, neighbors have grown friendlier. We wave to each other more often, hold block parties without fear of petty citations, and watch out for one another in the ways that matter. Not because a rulebook says so, but because we care. I still get up every morning, sipping coffee and stepping onto my back patio, gazing at the new glass door that replaced the shattered one. Occasionally, I'll recall the shock of that break-in, or the sight of the static-filled camera footage. But no longer weighs me down. Instead, it reminds me that sometimes shining a light in the darkness, quite literally, reveals truths that can bring down even the most controlling forces. In the end, Redwood Glen didn't need an iron-fisted HOA to remain a pleasant place to live. It just needed neighbors who refused to be bullied, who understood that true security comes from transparency and mutual respect. And if the old board learned anything, I suspect it's that in the digital age, camera blackouts and hush-hush conspiracies can't stay hidden for long. The break-in was staged to intimidate me, to undermine personal security measures, and to tighten the HOA's grip on every house in Redwood Glen. But in a twist of fate, it became the catalyst that exposed the board's corruption. Justice was served, and though the journey was fraught with tension, the community emerged stronger. I suspect Redwood Glen saga will make local headlines for years, a testament to how a determined resident, backed by a brave whistleblower, can dismantle an entrenched power structure. And when future HOA boards come knocking with rule changes, I'll be right there, cameras rolling, ready to hold them accountable. Because after surviving this ordeal, I know exactly how high the stakes can get when good people stay silent. The end.